Hello, my name is Freese and I'm a watchmaker, and I've been instructed by Finest Hour to undertake some sympathetic restoration work to this Omega Weems wristwatch. It's quite an exciting opportunity for me because I haven't worked on one of these before, and I've been working on vintage Omega watches for 25 years now, so it is in many ways a testament to how unusual it is to see one of these watches in the flesh. It's normally the sort of thing you'd only see in the museum or in a book, not something that you actually get to see in real life. So it's quite an exciting opportunity for me to get closer with this watch and to actually take a closer look at the movement and to see how the watch was constructed. This watch has gained cult status in recent years due to a replica being worn by Tom Hardy in Christopher Nolan's 2017 World War II epic Dunkirk. This film sparked a lot of interest in this particular model, and as such, it's highlighted the fact that there are very few of these watches around and they're very unusual to see. So now we're going to head over to my bench and we're going to begin work on this, where I'm going to take a look at the watch and work out what we need to do and move through the stages I go through in repairing a watch of this value. Okay, so I've got the watch on my bench now, and before I start to take it apart, I'll just tell you a little bit about the history of this particular item, because it has got some interesting historical facts that also relate to the function of the watch itself. The Weems Mark 7A wristwatch was issued to pilots and navigators of the RAF during World War II and features a movable outer bezel, which is set to the second hand to calculate longitude and to aid navigation. The watch actually took its name from Lieutenant Commander P.V. Weems. He was a well-known aviator, navigator and instructor at the Naval Officers School at Annapolis in Maryland in the USA. On the 5th of January 1940, the British Air Ministry placed a special order with Omega for 2,000 watches with the reference 2129. The order was marked urgent and delivery was to begin on the 10th of March 1940 to Goldsmiths and Silversmiths Company Limited in London. There were 5 manufacturers of these special timepieces: Longines, Omega, Jaeger-LeCoultre, Zenith and Movado were all making the Weems model. It's believed only around 7,000 were issued to the RAF. That was in 1940 at the outbreak of hostilities, and many will have no doubt seen action during the early dark days of the Battle of Britain and beyond. This watch really has a rich history, in terms of being a genuinely rare Omega watch. Omega mass-produced their watches, and this was made in small quantities for a specific reason. So the military history is equally important to the history that it carries with the Omega brand. It's a watch that's not only historically important, but also important in terms of its position in the pantheon of watch collecting, as it were. Okay, so in this next section of the video, I'm going to start to take the watch apart, and we can address a couple of issues along the way and have a closer look at why the watch isn't working and what we need to do. The purpose of the service is really just to get the movement working. I've been instructed not to touch the case or the crystal and so on, because obviously this watch is an original article, and as such it would be quite useful. It would be good to keep the originality of the watch, so all we really need to do is to make it work. So with that in mind, what I need to do is sort of take the movement out of the case, and we'll start to take the movements apart and have a look. In terms of things I've noticed so far, we've got an issue with the balance, which isn't swinging very well. Balance should be completely free. This one isn't. So that's something I will look at before during the disassembly to see what's going on there. The other issue, this crown here, is quite off-center. It's not turning concentrically, and so there are occasions where that can be improved, because it's usually the tube that goes into the crown that is the problem. So we'll take that out and have a look as well. So these are things that I'm going to do now as part of the disassembly. So I'm going to get the movement out of the case now, and we'll go from there. I've now removed the movement and the stem and the crown from the case, and the first thing I've had a look at is the stem and the crown itself. You can probably see when I twist this round that the stem is not sitting concentrically in the crown, and this is because at some point the crown has taken some form of impact which has bent the tube of the crown at its base. I've spoken to Chris at Finest Hour, and Chris and I have agreed that it's best to leave this alone, simply because, first of all, it is part of the story of the watch, but secondly, there is a risk involved in straightening this tube here where the stem goes into, and it's not a risk that's worth taking because it's very unusual to see this watch with its original case parts. So we've decided that it's best just to leave this alone in this instance, and the twist in the crown as part of the story of the watch. Okay, so the next step of the disassembly is to take the movement itself apart. So I'm going to take the dial hands off, and then I'm going to take the movement apart. As I do that, I'll be checking each of the components. I'm going to do this off camera, and then when I come back, I'll be able to talk you through the condition of the parts and what I've found through that process, and we can have a look at individual components. Okay, so I've got the movements taken apart now, disassembled. You know, it's all in pieces, and I can go through my findings. So the first thing to mention, there is no bad news. Everything appears to be in good condition. Admittedly, some of these parts are quite dirty. You can probably see the dirt on the top of the barrel lid here. Quite normal. There's some dirt around here where the ratchet wheel sits. Once again, normal place where the dirt will accumulate. But the main things that I'm concerned with are the condition of the wheels, the teeth, the pivots that support the wheels, to make sure there's no wear on those components, and they all look to be in good order, which is really good news. So what you can see here, we've got the barrel and the mainspring which powers the watch. That's the arbor there that supports holds the mainspring at the centre of the barrel. Ratchet wheel, so that's the part that turns the arbor, which in turn winds the spring up. You then have a series of train wheels where the power is transferred from the barrel onto the centre wheel, then the third wheel and the fourth wheel and the escape wheel, which comes down to the escapement, which is this part here, which is the balance. So talking about the balance, I've freed this up a lot. It's much better now. So I'm not concerned about that now. I think that's going to be okay. So I'll be putting the whole movement through the cleaning machine before I do any further work onto the balance, because I think I've done as much as I can at this stage. So before I put all these parts into the watch cleaning machine, there are a couple more things to do. One of those things is to hand clean any dirt off of the parts. So, for example, this barrel and the mainspring, that will be taken out, and we'll clean that, and we'll just wipe away any oil or dirt on these parts. So it gives us a much better chance of getting a really good, nice, clean result when the parts come out of the cleaning machine. So that's it for now. We'll get these all into the cleaner once I've finished those jobs, and then the next time we come back to the camera will be when I'm assembling the movement, so I can show you what I'm doing there. Okay, so as you can see here, I've completely reassembled the movement. So all of those individual parts that you saw in the last shot have all been through the watch cleaning machine. They then come out the other side, and then I've reassembled, lubricated and regulated the movement. I've been really pleased about the way this one has come out. Quite often, with movements of this age, you have a lot of problems when it comes to the timekeeping, because the balance wheel, which is this gold wheel here you can see spinning backwards and forwards, they tend to wear over time, and often they're subject to adjustments and fiddling around by watchmakers over the years. In this instance, the Omega 23.4 SC movement here is running really well. This movement was the first that Omega made with a central seconds hand, so it has historic significance in itself. But the thing that really surprised me is how accurately I was able to regulate it after the service. It's now running to within 10 seconds a day, which is the sort of rate you'd expect on a watch that's only 4 or 5 years old. So I think this is testament to the quality of Omega's movements from back then. There is a similarity between these movements and the Omega 30mm movement, which are also known for being very robust and reliable and still run well even to this day. So I'm really pleased with the way the service went, as I mentioned. As you'll see, we have a clean movement now. Obviously all these parts are completely clean, which is necessary in order to get timekeeping. But what I've done obviously is to leave the case alone, so you can still see the dirt and the mild corrosion, bits and pieces like that around the edge of the case, which is just obviously part of the history of the watch and something that Chris at the Finest Hour was keen to leave untouched, and I'm always happy to do that if that's what the customer wants. The only thing I have to clean, of course, is the inside of the case, just because the movement can't have any dirt in it, because it will affect the running of the movement. So there we are, there's our complete movement, and as I said, really pleased with it, and it's a really good example. It's incredible to see a watch of this age with its original casing components as well. So it really is, you know, a watch that is in effectively barn fine condition. it hasn't seen too much in the way of, adjustments and messing around over the years. Because these sort of watches, when they landed up in the hands of watchmakers, they were not viewed as being historically important over the years. They were just viewed as something they needed to get working again. So quite often, parts like the crowns and things like that were always sort of changed out with whatever was on at hand at the time. Just because the main purpose of the watchmaker was just to get the watch working again. So to see an example like this of such a rare watch in its barn fire condition really is quite a treat, and it's been a pleasure to work on it.